the section or the parsha of Arami Oved Avi Yetziat Mitzrayim, a text in which the pilgrim of old used to recite on the occasion of Mikra Bikkurim, offering the first fruit of his land in the sanctuary in the Beis Hamikdash. This text was integrated into the Haggadah as a central motif, as a central pillar. Everything else in the Haggadah was structured around the parsha, the section on Arami Oved Avi. It would appear, from studying the Mishnah, the Rambam, as if the recital of Arami Oved Avi, where it is indispensable for the full, perfect implementation of the mitzvah, the commandment of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, to tell the story of the Exodus on the 15th night of Nisan. As if this parsha, this section, formed the very core, the very substance of Yetzias, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. And the question is simple: why? What prompted Chazal or rabbis to borrow the parsha of Arami Oved Avi and integrate the latter into the Haggadah and simply structure everything else around that parsha? Apparently, the recital of the parsha by the pilgrim constituted an act of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. The pilgrim was duty-bound not just to recite a text, but to tell the story of the Exodus of Yetzias Mitzrayim. If I should use halachic lingo, I would say the following: the commandment to tell the story of Mitzrayim, of the Exodus, is binding upon a Jew on two occasions. One, when he offers the Bikkurim in the sanctuary. Second, on the 15th night of Nisan. But it is an identical performance. The recital of the parsha of Mikra, we call Mikra Bikkurim, is not just a recital of a text, but it is the narrating of the events which occurred in Mitzrayim, and it is substantially, essentially, conceptually, a performance of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. The Torah did not specify the text we are supposed to use on the first night of Nisan. She stated in general terms the Haggadah. However, she did point out the text which is to be read in Beis Hamikdash at the time of Arami Bikkurim. etc., etc. The conclusion is a simple one. Is this parsha, Arami Oved Avi, was recommended by the Torah as the exclusive text to be read in order to fulfill the commandment of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is incumbent upon the pilgrim who offered Bikkurim to the Almighty. Then there is a good reason to assume that the narration of the first night of Passover should avail itself of the same text. In both cases, we were commanded to tell the story of the Exodus of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Isn't it the case of A equals B, B equals C, that A equals C? Don't be discouraged, I'll come to you. I'll warm up. But for the time being, we have to tolerate the halachic frost which prevailed there. Then, the common root of both, of Arami Oved Avi, which is recited on the occasion of Haggadah Bikkurim, of offering the first fruit to the Lord, and the Haggadah, the common root of both, is to be found in one norm, namely that of hakarat, of gratitude and thanksgiving. Maimonides, as well as the author of the Chinuch, the Rambam, emphasized, Maimonides not only in Ner Nevuchim, but also in Sefer HaMitzvot, emphasized that the very essence of both mitzvot, of the mitzvot Mikra Bikkurim and Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the very essence consists in experiencing and expressing the sense of gratitude to the Almighty. The nation as a whole, every Jew, on the 15th day of Nisan, and the pilgrim on the occasion of his offering the first fruit in the Beis HaMikdash, who are duty bound to extol and praise the Almighty on both occasions. There is a common root by which both mitzvahs are nurtured, and that common root is the duty to acknowledge kindness and to give thanks. As a matter of fact, it's just plain habit on my part to say the Rambam and the Chinuch are separate. I mean, we state it in the Haggadah. The name of the son of Shirah Chadosh Halukah. The whole purpose, describing the events and telling the story of the Exodus, is in order to give thanks to the Almighty. And as far as Mikra Bikkurim is concerned, there is a pasuk in the section of Mikra Bikkurim in Kesaveh, which is a very difficult one. Haggadati hayim l'Hashem Elokecho ki bosi al haaretz. What does mean Haggadat hayim? I do state today that I have come to the land, that I've inherited the land. It doesn't have to state it. So Targum Guinness in Venezuela says that Haggadati has the semantics of being thankful, appreciative, indebted, of a correspondence. I give thanks to the Lord, my God, that I have inherited the land which He promised to our ancestors. Haggadati not in the sense of telling, narrating, stating, saying. I mean, it makes very little sense in context of the pasuk in parsha Kesaveh. But Haggadati in the sense of Ani Mishabeach, I praise, I extol, I glorify, and so forth. As a matter of fact, there is a suggestion. I mean, I'm not subscribing to it, but there is a suggestion which merits our attention, that the word Haggadah means Shevach. Not the Haggadah as story, but means hallelujah. Haggadah Yid and Hashem Elokecha, you bless me otherwise. It makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, the book would have been called Sippur. Why only Haggadah? Haggadah to the Birchos, it's Ramah to the Birchos. We have also the expression, the man Tishaper goes with Birchos, when Birchos is as well to the Mitzrayim. So the Torah used many synonyms with regard to the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There is no reason why the book, the official book on the Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, should be called Haggadah, unless you accept Guinness and Benazir's interpretation of the word Haggadah as praise or glorification or an expression of thanks. So that's why our rabbis have introduced the same text on the night of Mesorah, since the root of the mitzvah is one, namely Haggadah. Haggadah Hayim Rabbi Shem Elokecha, Haggadah Tamid. At this juncture, right here, I wish to pick up the main topic of my shiur tonight. The topic of my shiur, I mean, I did it in the Torah. But the topic of my shiur is 9 aspects. You will count whether it be 9, 10, or perhaps 8. I'm not sure. But in what vicinity? It's between 8 and 10. The 9 will settle for 9. Sorry, compromise. The 9 basic aspects of the Haggadah. For purely pedagogical, juristic reasons, I'm doing this analysis within the context of a comparative study of Haggadah, a Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim recited by a Jew Pesach night, and Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim recited by the pilgrim of old in the Beis HaMikdash. I believe that within the context of a comparative study, I'll succeed not only in comparing both commandments, but also in contrasting them, to see the differences and the similarities. Let us now take up the first aspect of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, which we fulfill on the night of Pesach. And the problem and its relationship to the Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, which the pilgrim used to fulfill. As far as the first aspect is concerned, and what is the first aspect? But I didn't ask about the 10th, but about the first and the last. The first is simple. What is the first aspect, the halachic aspect of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim? The first one, very beginning, the most elementary one. What is it? Oh, you are going to read to me, Kaddish V'Charatz? I forgot it already. No, you have me wrong. What is the first halachic conceptual aspect? What should a Jew do in order to fulfill the mitzvah from the Haggadah to the Birchos? What is the most primitive approach to it? It's not so primitive, but the most elementary approach. What is it? What is it? To give me a definition. Let us divide the mitzvah Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim into 9 parts. What's the first part? What? No. So somebody said it, but to say it. The first mitzvah is saying, what is the first aspect, the most elementary? The simplest aspect of Torah Yetzias, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the seudah, is Sippur. Meaning, what is Sippur? But Sippur is a very dangerous word in this context. I'll tell you. When you say Sippur, it means it can be my own literary creation. I'm Baruch Hashem literary talented, so why shouldn't I write in that way? Some people try, have tried, and still trying. So why not my own Sippur? I'll follow the guidance, tradition, but my own word. This is exactly why Arami Oved Avi was introduced. You tell it in the lingo of the scripture. If some people didn't understand it here, what I meant, outright you have to tell it in the language of Torah Sheba'al Peh. You don't write the story of Exodus of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The story which is told, the text which was fixed, the sentences, and the words which were standardized, they should be repeated and read. Reading, Kriah. If you want, you can call it Amirah, but I would prefer the word Kriah to Amirah. Kriah, to read, not your own creation, but a parsha, a section of Torah Sheba'al Peh. At this stage, or at this phase, when we say Haggadah, what do you understand by Haggadah? What do you understand by Haggadah at this stage? Reading of a certain fixed, standardized text. It means in Torah Sheba'al Peh. And the text to be read was chosen by Chazal as the parshas Arami Oved Avi. So you need a text, a holy text, a text of Torah Sheba'al Peh, and this, but I could read the parshas ways. And wherever, it's a beautiful description of the land. There are more details than in Arami Oved Avi. No, but that I can do. Not only must it be a text of Torah Sheba'al Peh, the text is fixed, standardized, namely, which text? Arami Oved Avi, which I can't find in Shmeis, in the Sefer Haggadah, in the Book of Redemption, but I have to search for it and finally, if I have patience, I'll find it at the end of the Chamisha Chushet Torah, in Parsha Mesorah. As far as this is concerned, that the first aspect of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim is to read, and I would prefer Kriah to Amirah. I would also prefer Kriah to Haggadah in this regard, because Kriah means you read the text. Is with regard to that, so Mikra Bikkurim and Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim are almost identical. Whatever you read at Mikra Bikkurim, you are supposed to read at the seudah. However, the identity of Mikra Bikkurim and Haggadah ends here at the first aspect. Kriah is only the first aspect of Haggadah. There are eight more aspects of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. Do those aspects apply to Mikra Bikkurim as well, or they don't apply at all? They're completely different. That's what we will see. Can we discover in Mikra Bikkurim those dimensions which are so characteristic of the Haggadah? I doubt it very much. And let me analyze those aspects. What aspect do you have? Namely what? What's the first aspect? Kriah. Kriah means Kriah is a parsha, which was teached and standardized by Chazal. As far as Mikra Bikkurim is concerned, that's all which the Torah has required of the pilgrim who brought the Bikkurim. Just reading. And only reading, nothing else. There was no need for the lady Bikkurim, for the pilgrim who brought the Bikkurim, to explain what he read, to reflect upon what he read, to interpret. He just had to do mechanical reading, nothing else. However, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim on Mesorah night consists not only of reciting of a text, but, as I said it so many times, the shiur I at least spoken 25 times about that. And now you want me to invent something new. Whatever I said in previous years belongs to you. If I should say it, I'll be accused of plagiarism. All right, let's try. Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim is basically, it's not homiletics, it is pure, strict halacha. Basically, a mitzvah or an act of Talmud Rebbe, of learning in depth, of exploring the various dimensions of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of an inquiry of, as Chazal call it, Midrash, ודרך כל הפרשה כולו Arami Oved Avi. He interprets the whole parsha. Hence, just reading the text is only one aspect of the mitzvah. Reading does not suffice. One must interpret it. And if you have a goddess, and the boys told me that they have been selling a goddess to you, So how do you handle the Arami Oved Avi, the parsha? How do you handle this parsha? You just say, Arami Oved Avi, Yetziat Mitzrayim, Vayera Shem Yisei Moed La'ishem U'Leidot L'Atzmo Rom, Vayirei Yisrael HaMitzrim. We say it fast, quickly. Well, how do you handle the parsha, Arami Oved Avi? It was integrated in the Sefer Haggadah. Fine, how is it handled? What do you do with this parsha? Whoever I got done should tell me. Each word is interpreted, analyzed, semantically analyzed. We are out to find the semantics of each word of the parsha. Melamed. And we find those semantics by what? By comparative study. The word in Arami Oved Avi is transferred into a different frame of reference, of Sefer Shmeis. And by comparing both texts, we arrive at we draw the proper conclusions. So, at the second stage, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim means interpretation of Torah Sheba'al Peh in terms of Torah Sheba'al Peh. Then just reading of the text does not suffice. One must interpret it within the framework of Torah Sheba'al Peh. In other words, Haggadah, the word Haggadah, at the second stage, what does it mean? A Torah Sheba'al Peh analysis of the Torah Sheba'al text. Torah Sheba'al Peh analysis of the Torah Sheba'al from the biblical text. In our case, it is the analysis in terms of semantics and also in terms of concept of the text of Arami Oved Avi in accordance with the 13 principles of Midrash, of the Gimel Midrash. As a matter of fact, when the Talmud in Broches speaks of Torah Sheba'al Peh, so that the Talmud divides Torah Sheba'al Peh into 3 categories: Midrash, Mishnah, and Gemara. Midrash means interpretation of Torah Sheba'al in accordance with the principles of exegesis and interpretation. There are 13 principles of interpretation. This is Midrash. Next is Mishnah. When the Gemara speaks about Mishnah, the Gemara means Mishnahs, as well as clear halachic decisions or judgments. Halachic judgments is Mishnah. When the Gemara speaks about, when the Gemara mentions the word Gemara, and the Talmud mentions Gemara, what does the Talmud in mind? Of course, the text of the Talmud, but moreover, what we call culminates, means Torah thought, thinking. Creative Torah thinking, what we call Seudah. Interesting is that in the Haggadah we have all 3 groups, both Midrash, Torah Sheba'al by Torah Sheba'al Peh, Mishnah, Halacha Brura, as well as Gemara. Well, in logical thinking, strict halachic thought, thinking. Where do you have Midrash? This is the parsha Arami Oved Avi. Parsha Arami Oved Avi. Where do you have halachas? Yes, where do you have halachas? Kol Shmishulam after Shevach la Pesach leYotze Dechava Sippur, but then we say it for a different reason. V'achatoem olei kilchas haPesach im aspirin ach haPesach ha'tikumah. And where do you have Gemara? Means the deduction by the logic, intellectual activity. Mishnah Sheba'al what? Mishnah Sheba'al? No, Mishnah Sheba'al is Midrash. You mean that the Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Yosef really? This is Midrash. This is Midrash. I know back there. What do you say? No, I would say another. Shalom Charanate, the quote another. Whenever the Gemara quotes another text, so it comes under the category of Midrash. What? It's Midrash again. Again Midrash. Again Midrash. This is a logical deduction. בכל דור מודך הרודום מירש הסצמי כאילו הוא יוצא ממצרים. שנאמר ראשון ההיל משום במהוב וראשון ההלורס נשבע השם למסינו לססלנו. Right. The foundation is Midrash. That in every generation one should experience the exile and the redemption. But the conclusion is not Midrash but Gemara. It's not. לפיכך אנחנו חייבים לעידס ולהלב כל רעי ומשווה סלונו ולעבסנו הנפלאים. Of course, you understand very well that the interpretation of Haggadah as a study in depth, as a midrashic study in depth, or a halachic study in depth, or a logical halachic study in depth, is not, this interpretation is not applicable to Mikra Bikkurim. Mikra Bikkurim is just reading. But Haggadah Shal Pesach starts with reading, of course. It's reading of a text, but the reading is converted into a study, into an intellectual activity, into Talmud. Do you have the expression or the verb Haggadah in context with Talmud Torah? I feel correct. Who is Mamre? The thing similar to Shakid is Shakid with Israel. What means Shakid? One person to Gideon. What means one person to Gideon? It means you test on the Torah which I give you, the basis Israel, and the verb which the Torah uses for the lambing, for teaching, and for guiding. Shakid the basis of Israel. Alright, this is Haggadah. Haggadah means to study, to learn, to understand. Now second stage of Haggadah. The third aspect of Haggadah. What's the third aspect of Haggadah? Would somebody suggest it to me? Because we spoke just recently, 5 minutes ago, about logical thinking, about Gemara, Shirah. Will somebody use it here and tell me? Aspect number 1, technical mechanical reading. Aspect number 2, teaching, study in depth. Fine, midrash. Now aspect number 3. What do you say? I can't do it. Teaching is correct. The Rambam says, mitzvah le'yidia le'banim. It is incumbent upon us to tell the story to children. Apparently, the Haggadah constitutes not only a study in depth, but also an act of Mesorah, of passing on, of transmitting. One is obligated to teach and to pass on the story of Mitzrayim. It is an act of Mesorah v'Kabbalah. And when the Haggadah is recited, it is not only, it is addressed not only to listeners, but also to whom? Not only to listeners, but also to whom? You can be a listener, to students, to disciples, to pupils. One can be a listener, but not be a disciple. The Haggadah is not only I tell the story, somebody is listening, it's important, but I teach the story, somebody is being taught. That's exactly what Mesorah is. Now I would like you to prove it, that I'm right in this regard. That Haggadah at the third stage has the connotation of teaching, and I emphasize not so much, I'm not interested in teaching as in Mesorah, in tradition, transmitting, passing on, giving. over from one generation to another. I'm emphasizing that. The God of the Mikra can be just telling the story and you listen, and I emphasize it. But I'm not interested in listeners. I'm interested in Talmudim. I'm a Melamed myself. I like to teach. I don't like to tell stories. No, let's tell not. Yeah, you mentioned the Chacham already, so what's the use of the Rosh? So you want benefit by introducing the Rosh and the Tamish in Yiddish. Say or not means Mabika from Arami belongs somewhere else. No. No. There is a funny sentence in the Haggadah. Very strange sentence in the Haggadah. And you'll find it, if you're in Haggadah, you'll find it before the Haggadah. Just when we are about to speak about the Haggadah, so a funny, we come across a very strange sentence, whose meaning we don't understand, and if it was introduced, why wasn't it introduced here and not at the beginning of the Haggadah? How do you start the story about the four bones? It's very popular, the four sons. Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenosan Teir Olam Yisrael Keneged Abo Bonim Divroteo. The whole sentence of Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenosan Teir Olam Yisrael makes no sense. It's out of context. Keneged Abo Bonim Divroteo, Echad Chochem, Echad Rosher, Echad Tam, Echad Shenedei Risha. What's the meaning of Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenosan Teir Olam Yisrael? I mean, by repeating, I'll repeat it again. By mere association, could you remind yourself of something else? By mere association, can you remind yourself of something else? Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu, Baruch Shenosan Teir Olam Yisrael. Remind yourself of something. After all, you are young, you have good memories. Baruch Shona? No, I know Shona. All right, the $64,000 question. No answer? No, the $64,000. What? Just on it, huh? Correct. It's an abbreviation of Yetzias. Abbreviation of the blessings we pronounce every morning, which we call Yetzias, Baruch atah Hashem v'chol Hashem tzisron v'aseh v'dirasero, v'la'arev ni'ad Hashem kin et dirasrosa b'sinu v'fi amcha b'Yisrael, v'ni anachnu v'tzeitzeiנו, we and our children's children, kloni yishmecho v'lem yitzarasecho lishmo. So the Birkas HaTorah are related not so much to the study of Torah, but to teaching of Torah, particular to the act of transmitting Torah, of passing on. ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יהיה לשמך ולהם תשרתך לשמו, and the conclusion is strange. ברוך אתה השם, not a nation Teir Olam Yisrael, and the one Teir Olam Yisrael. The Almighty Himself is involved in the Mesorah community. He Himself passes on, transmits, teaches. So that's why the Birkas HaTorah emphasizes. And we pray that the word of the Torah be sweet in our mouth, in the mouth of our children, and we all, the whole community, grandfather, father, grandson, great-grandson, we could all together, all of them, know by name and study the Torah Rishma. And that's why Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu, when they are before there was no need to pronounce Birkas HaTorah. Before Haggadah, because we did not speak of the mitzvah word. We spoke of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. When you start with Haggadah, ופרעיתן שם להיות חזוק עזרי נטיר, ואילו לא יצא חשבון אנשים מצרים הרענו וננו זה וננו משובתם היינו בפעם מצרות, לפרון החכון כל הדברים ונשכנים. You don't speak about teaching, you speak about telling, about narrating, or at best about studying. You don't speak about Mesorah, you speak about the second aspect, but not about the third aspect, that mitzvah Haggadah expresses itself in teaching, in passing on, in turning over, in transmitting, in letting somebody share my knowledge. You don't say it. When do you begin to say it? When are you ready to say it? When you are ready to pick up the third aspect. With the story of the four sons. כנגד עבור בנו דברתנו, והגעת לברכו. וימחו אליה. So it means that we are ready to fulfill or to implement not only the mitzvah of Talmud, of Limud, but Talmud, of teaching and passing on, and letting others share in our knowledge. So, וני אנחנו וצאצאינו ותצאו עמך בית ישראל. That's why we remember that in order that it's worthwhile to say a bracha, benediction, for the great privilege that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has bestowed upon us. Not only to know the Torah and to study it for ourselves, but to teach it to others, and particularly to be a member of the Mesorah community. It's a great and strange community. It begins with Meshach Kibotero Messina in Mesorah Yeshua. It will never end. Once you are going to join that community, so you have to pronounce which benediction? Birkas HaTorah. And that's why you say it in an abbreviated form. Namely, Baruch Hamokim Baruch Hu, Baruch Shnosan Teira Arami Yisrael. And we are going to continue. כנגד עבור בנו דברתנו. Now, so how many aspects did you cover? Who's with the math? All right. First aspect, what's the first aspect? Reading, technical reading. The one who was not blessed with a great mind, the one who had no opportunity to study, the one who came from a different background, was not provided with necessary knowledge which is required for a study in depth. He can also participate and share in the mitzvah Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. There is the first aspect. What is it? Just to read. Who cannot read? Everybody can read. It's simple. Second aspect, limit for yourself, understand, explore in depth, analyze it. The third aspect is the great privilege which was granted to us to join the community of the Mesorah community, of which the Almighty is a member. Would you like to join that community? Don't have to pay any dues. Now the fourth, yes? You have to the fourth aspect. There is something else in Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, in the structure of the Haggadah, which is relevant. Regarding the mitzvah of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the form of narration, the way we tell this story, avails itself of a dialogue, seudah, so forth, of a dialogue. One asks, another person answers. The whole recital, basically the whole recital of the Haggadah, is a response to what? There's the 4 questions which were addressed to the people by a young child, a naive child. Well, without this understanding, you cannot start. You cannot start Haggadah from Haggadah Mayim. There is no one to ask, so there is no need for an answer. The whole recital responds to these 4 questions asked by the child. Now a question, I have a 5th question, arises. Why is it necessary? Why is it necessary to dramatize that a child should ask? And we try to stimulate the child, the curiosity of the child, in order to make him ask. Child is sleeping, he's hungry. But we try to make him ask. Why is it necessary? We got it to the Mincha, of course, so why did it require this kind of dramatic conversation, dialogue, of asking and answering, of inquiring and responding? Why was it necessary? I believe that this law is not just by basic idea. God reveals to man only if man searches for him. If one is not inquisitive, if one expects God to reveal himself without making an all-out effort to find him, he will never meet God. וביקשת משם ומוצאו ביקשת משם על שם רקחו ומוצאו כי סדרשנו בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך. From thence you will seek the Lord, and thou shalt find him, if thou search after him with all thy might, with all thy heart, with all thy soul. Nachmanides, in his comments on the verse, V'shichne tidreshu b'sa shama, his habitation, ye shall seek, and thither thou shalt come, says the following, שתלכו לי מארץ מרחקים, ותשאלו, אי דרך בית ה'. You should come to me, the Almighty says, from distant land, and you should inquire, where is the road leading to God's habitation? The searching for the sanctuary, the curiosity to know where the sanctuary is per se a great experience, redeeming and sanctifying. The curiosity follows the efforts of man and makes the pilgrimage meaningful. When Yisrael asked Moses, what do the people do in your place the whole day? Yisrael didn't understand. Yisrael had, like a clergyman, he had hours for receiving the congregants. But when he saw that Moses spent the whole day with the people, he asked, what did the people do in your place? Or what are you doing for the people? What did Moshe answer? The first answer, I gave him a few answers. But the first answer, But I want to debate in quotation. The people come to me because they search for God. The people are God thirsty, God intoxicated. They want to find God. They search for God, and they want guidance from it. The first night of Pesach, we try to stimulate the curiosity of the child. We try to make him inquisitive. And we want, because the story of Mitzrayim is a story of a long search on the part of many generations for God. Who finally find it. They will come close to us. And we want the child to join this march of the Mesorah community. And how can a child join this march if not by asking questions during the night, during the seudah? To arouse the naive curiosity of a child is like making a child a God searcher. What is more beautiful than that? So now aspect number, what's the number now? Aspect number 5. What is Haggadah here? The search for God. Just a minute, let's recount. Let's imagine those are bellows. Let's recount. Technical reading, 1, next. Study, 3. Mesorah, 4. The search for God. 4, not 5. We don't mislead me, Rabbi. To search for God, not only to find God. God will never reveal himself if the person is not inquisitive and doesn't search for it. Now, aspect number 5. Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, like the whole Seudah, is structured around, I am afraid to say the last word. Around what? What would you say? Structured around, revolves around what? Seudah. A meal. Nothing sensational. A meal. The framework within which the mitzvah Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim is attained and fully realized is a plain seudah yomtev, a meal, a holiday meal. You want me to prove it? Or you believe me? I have to prove that. Because this is a great, they call it chiddush, even though it's simple. The first act as a seudah is, you know how you begin the seudah. It's kiddush, correct? Remember that. The first act, the kiddush, is an integral part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. I want you to understand that Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim on Pesach night begins with the Kiddush and concludes with what? With the Broche at Yishtabach. Melech Hilchei Olamim or Melech Mulot at Yishboches. The bench in Birkas Hamazon Pesach night is not the ordinary Birkas Hamazon of an ordinary Sunday or Monday or Tuesday. It is the Birkas Hamazon is an integral part of the Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. I'll explain it to you. And so is the Kiddush. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says that we must not recite the Kiddush prior to Shkia, to sunset. Even though we are ready to postpone the drinking of the wine until after nightfall. It's not the drinking of the wine, as the Magen Avraham wants to interpret, but the recital of the Kiddush. This itself is the first act of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why? Apparently the Kiddush on Pesach night has a double connotation, double meaning. It is Kiddush because Pesach night is holiday, it's a Leil Yom Tov, and it is incumbent upon us to recite Kiddush, to usher in the Shabbos by the recital of Kiddush, the Shabbos and Yom Tov. And secondly, the Kiddush itself is a part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. First of all, the Kiddush is considered as a part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. And I would say that's very simple to explain. Why? What do you say? I beg your pardon? Yes. You said something, I didn't catch it. What? No. What difference is it? Correct. Yeah. Which course is it? Supposed to be. No. Oh, if you meant this way, so you're wrong. No. Because the Hashabach Abom Kolom is the third expression of freedom or redemption, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to Moshe. V'kach testem li'Aaron, v'rei lachem l'Elokim. Without his hands, and this is basically the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So before we start telling the story of the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim, we declare right away that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has fulfilled his promise and shows us as a covenantal community and as a separate, unique nation. This is number one, correct? This is number one. But there is another reason. I believe the second reason is the true one. Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim Pesach night is implemented through two ways of implementation. Both are necessary, are indispensable. One medium is what? What we just said. Correct? Good. Spoken word. Correct? This is Haggadah. Secondly, if you said it first, you mentioned it first, let me hear it. Through eating, through consuming food. Simple. Very strange. Because Pesach, Matzah and Morer, eating a Pesach, Matzah and Morer, pursues actually two objectives on Pesach night. Namely, one objective, the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Pesach, Matzah and Morer. Be'erach Matzah is Rochles Abosa Balayla Hazeh, or Matzah Mreirim Yichlu. Second, the eating of Pesach, Matzah and Morer is an instrument or a medium of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. We tell the story by eating Pesach, Matzah and Morer. Not only by using the human gift of speech, the spoken word, but by acting like a natural being and eating those particulars, those religious articles, the symbolic food items, who won't fulfill the mitzvah of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. Who said it? Rabbi Soloveitchik said it, so you don't listen. Who said it? Rabbi Gamliel, of course. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Gamliel in his statement, Kol Shalom after Shedvorah Mele Bapesach, Leyotzei Vechavosei, that wird stated, that the eating of Pesach Matzah Morer is a part of what? Is a part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. You can tell a story by using your vocabulary, you can tell a story by doing something. And you do tell the story of Mitzrayim in two ways. By speaking, by speech, and by acting. Acting in the sense of eating. And Rabbi Gamliel, what did Rabbi Gamliel add? That before you eat Pesach Matzah Morer, you should interpret their symbolic significance, connotation, what they symbolize. Pesach Matzah Morer. In other words, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim is a blend of storytelling, Torah teaching, and partaking of a meal. A funny blend. A combination of the spoken word and a physiological function, such as eating. Seudah, Pesach night, means an intermingling of physical pleasure with Torah debate. You don't want to debate, all right? Of an activity which is motivated by biological pressure and which is not characteristic of men at all. It's an animal activity. This is one medium, one part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the other part consists of God's Word. Combination of both is the story of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. Is combination of both represents Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim to perfection. And Kiddush ushers in the Seudah Shabbos and Yom Tov, or every Shabbos. You must not eat before Kiddush. Why? One must not eat before Kiddush. Why? Because before Kiddush, whatever you eat before Kiddush will belong to Seudah Shevach. And the Jew is enjoined from consuming the Seudah Shevach on Shabbos. As simple as that. Then you know the halacha, you all know the halacha. Ein Kiddush or ben kein Seudah. Why is it so? That if I say Kiddush, and the Kiddush is not followed by a meal, so the Kiddush is meaningless. Because the function of the Kiddush is to usher in the Seudah Shabbos. This is the introduction to Seudah Shabbos. If Kiddush is not recited, whatever a Jew eats and consumes is nothing but crumbs from the Seudah Shevach. And the Jew is obligated or enjoined to eat Shabbos exclusively as Seudah Shabbos. I'm not speaking about Torah. Kiddush makes the Seudah as Seudah Yontif. And Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim on Pesach night is a combination of Haggadah and Seudah. I would rather think that Haggadah is structured and revolves around Seudah. The frame of reference is Seudah. They understand very well. So Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim is consists not only of Mikra Bikkurim, of speaking, of saying, of pronouncing, of using my speech, which God bestowed upon me. But by a combination of the spoken word and physiological activity, which is being raised and elevated to great heights by being combined with the spoken word of God. As a matter of fact, let me interject. I could have omitted it. Seudah as a service. Seudah as a service to God. Or Seudah in the presence of God. To eat in the presence of God are central ideas in Judaism. Judaism wanted to achieve, to create an institution which prima facie is absurd, that man is obligated to eat in the presence of God. That eating, consuming food, is a holy function, a meaningful performance. It's something great if it is done and practiced properly. And that is, for instance, a verse like Arami Oved Avi in Mesorah. Le'echol lechem in chesen Moshe lifnei Elokim, that Aaron in the elders of Israel came to eat bread in the presence of God. Or such verses like V'achalto lifnei Hashem Elokecha were so completely alien and they bordered on the paradoxical as far as the Greek civilization was concerned. In the Greek civilization you have legends about Diogenes who used to hide himself when he ate, because eating is an animal function and the man should not exhibit animality. And Aristotle couldn't understand, how can you serve God with your stomach? You serve God with your mind. Jacob Schiff, when he once visited the Rabbi when he walked into Rabbi Aronovich's room, he was saying the shiur in Yerideah. The old timers still remember him. So Jacob Schiff asked the guide, what is the old man saying? What is he teaching them? So he told him about Melicha, how to salt meat. So he said, I don't support institutions, religious institutions which are interested in the stomach. Of course, the first chelek of Yerideah is interest concerned with the stomach, not with the abdomen, no question about it. But this is the greatness of Yerideah. To teach the stomach or the human body to behave in the presence of God is more difficult than to teach the mind to behave properly in the presence of God. If you start with the mind, you'll fail. If you start with the body, you may succeed. And whoever knows the expressions Shulchan Shalom Mechaper, as the table is like the Mizbeach, which grants atonement to the person who eats it, we will understand what it means, what the word seudah means or denotes. And around that seudah is the whole seudah structure, and Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim as a mitzvah was integrated into the seudah, into the institution of seudah. Now, what is, of course, what is it now? What's the number? Fifth. It's not accordance with Maisim. So, of course, you'll take the second aspect, Limud, the third aspect, Mesorah, the second aspect, Limud, the third aspect, Mesorah, the fourth aspect, search of God by the child. Of course, all those aspects don't apply to Mikra Bikkurim. They are typical, even though Mikra Bikkurim is involved with Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, but Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, as far as the pilgrim is concerned, was a simple act, reading and that's all, consisted of reading and that's all. Limud, Mesorah, search of God, is typical and characteristic exclusively of the Haggadah Pesach night. Now let's pick up the fifth aspect of the Haggadah, of Sippur Yetziat. Read. Or you count again. Oh yeah, here the fifth part. Correct. Sixth. So I made a mistake. Even though both Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim and Pesach and Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim by the Mikra Bikkurim, by the pilgrim, are rooted in Torah Sheba'al Peh, as I stated before. The ways in which gratitude is expressed by the pilgrim and by the Jew Pesach night differ from each other. Mikra Bikkurim consists of Shevach, or expressing thanks. Haggadah consists not only of Shevach, but of shiur as well. What's the difference between Shevach and shiur? It was an element which was completely overlooked by the Mesorah Haggadah. They identified shiur with Shevach. It's completely wrong. No, What? Shevach is what? No. If you'll be less philosophical, it will help. Just like that. Would you guys? Yeah, what's the song? What? 4,000, plan. Shirah is continuous. You are right. Shirah is continuous. But it's still, because you didn't answer my question. I might apologize for that. In Mikra Bikkurim, the precept of gratitude is fulfilled indirectly by telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. There are no special words of praise. There are no explicit words of praise. In Arami Oved Avi, from the beginning to the end, there is not a single word which we use in order to express our thanks, our indebtedness to the Almighty. All you do, what do you do in Arami Oved Avi? I mean, the way the pilgrim used to say, all the pilgrim used to do was what? Describe the fact, narrate the story of the events which happened. All addenda were superfluous. The duty of a correspondent was discharged by describing the events. This is considered Shevach or Hallel. What do you say about it? Is it a Torah stable? All one is supposed to do, was supposed to do, when the pilgrim came to the Beis HaMikdash, who was to tell the truth, nothing else. What happened? I understand. There was implicit Shevach, implicit word of praise in the descriptive, in the narrative about events. Correct. I would like you to quote me a Gemara. Yes, you are right. But if you don't tell the story, it's bad. Of course, bad. There was no need for extra words of praise. All the Torah wanted the pilgrim to do is to tell the truth. And the praise is implicit in the truth. Correct? Now, yes. It's a Gemara, yes, what's a Gemara? No, it's too long for me. When the Gemara asks the question, why is there no Hallel on Purim? What did the Gemara answer? To read the story, Megillas Esther is the highest praise. There are no words of praise to the Almighty in the Megillah. You just read the story, you understand the story, and by reading and understanding the story, you understand that God supervises the events, and He is responsible for the salvation. This itself is like equals praise and glorification. This is kind of philosophy which the Talmud applies to Megillah. In other words, thanksgiving is implicit in the narration itself. But on the night of Pesach, are we satisfied with the descriptive story? Or certainly not. On the night of Pesach, the Shevach expresses itself explicitly in words of praise. We narrate the whole story. Yet we are not satisfied with implicit praise. We sing a hymn. Here I come to your spontaneity. We sing a hymn. We recite Hallel. We say particularly Shirah Chadosh. And Israel, I'll apologize to him now. And Shirah Chadosh means spontaneous. I don't ask whether it is necessary or unnecessary. Perhaps the description just of the events would be modest praise. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not need Hallel, nor does he require of a person, to sing to him a hymn. Sing a hymn to him. But on Pesach night, the Jew is not only grateful, he is overflowing with great gratitude. It is a night of ecstasy. When man is God intoxicated, it's the night of Anila Deidi, V'Deideli, we say Shirah Pesach night. Shirah is the motto of the holiday of Pesach, of the 7-8 days of Pesach. It is the romance, Pesach initiated the romance between God and the community. Maimonides was asked, not asked, he objected to the practice. What he asked, what right do you have? What right do you have to praise God and to cite many attributes of God? Who is man? Foolish man. Does foolish man have a right to praise the Almighty? Does man, as Maimonides calls him, Shayim kan u'mocha bekever. Today is Rabbi Zakkai had applied the same title to man. Shayim kan u'mocha bekever. Today is here and tomorrow in grave. Foolish Limited. What right does he have to sing a hymn to God? My man is subjected to the Shirah Yichud and Shirah Kovetz. So what did the Paitonim answer him? And what did the Chassidim answer my man? Exactly. You ask for license, I'll tell you where the license is. Philosophically, we have no license. Philosophically, it is an arrogance, it's an arrogant act. It's impudent and insolent on the part of man to say of God, what right do you have to say? Do you understand what God is? Do you have access to the Almighty? But the license is to be found in our inability to suppress our longing for God and our desire to praise Him. Then men must sing a hymn to God. The hymn is foolish, yes, from intellectual viewpoint, it's absurd. But we cannot suppress, we cannot remain passive. We have to sing, no matter how foolish it is. As for Pesach night, the Jew asks no questions. He's overflowing with love, with gratitude. It's not enough to describe events. He does describe an Arami Oved Avi. But when it comes to the first cup, he feels it. And falls off all control, so to say. And begins to say Hallel, Hallel, Hallel Agodol, and Nishpas Tochai, Dvorah Shemach Hashem Rabbi. Of course, Mikra Bikkurim is just descriptive. The words of praise are implicit in the descriptive narration, while Pesach night the words of praise are spontaneous and explicit. The Jew sings a hymn to God, whether he is qualified to do so or not. No questions asked. He has to do it because he must do it. You know the old saying, du kannst, weil du musst. Now what aspect? What aspect is now? We're up to 7 years. 7, right. והילו להיצי הקודש ברוך הוא אסרסנו ממצרים, אריונו ובני בנינו משובודים מוינו לפרי במצרים. Do you recognize the sentence? Do you identify the sentence? All right, where is it? Where is it? The Megillah, where is it? No, I want to know. At the beginning of that question. Good. Next, we repeat the same sentence, of course, using different words, but the same idea. בכל דרך ודרך חייב אדם וירס עצמי, כאילו יוצא מצרים, שנאמר ויסונו עצי מישור. Do you recognize this sentence? If I were to give an exam here, to identify certain sentences, how many would fail? כל דרך ודרך חייב אדם וירס עצמי, כאילו הוא יוצא מצרים, שנאמר ויסונו עצי מישור. Where is it? In the Haggadah, yes. Of course I could. I wouldn't quote the Megillah now. 10 days before Pesach, I wouldn't quote the Megillah. But where is it in the Haggadah? After we conclude the parsha Arami Oved Avi, we are about what? To start Hallel, saying Hallel. So he inserts the B'chol Deir V'Deir Chai V'Odam Deir Satzmei Kilo Yotzam Mitzrayim. This is second. There's a third quotation, is similar. V'yish Omdo L'Aviseinu V'Lonu Shloechot B'Uvada V'Deleinu L'Chavaseinu L'Akadosh Baruch Hu Matzaleinu V'Yodam. Do you recognize this sentence? Yes, right. Let's analyze those 3 sentences. The first we make right at the beginning of the recital. Correct? הריון ובנינו ובני בנינו מסיבות והיינו לקחת במצרים. In order we make it at the very beginning of the Haggadah. The very beginning, we just start of an Yetzias Mitzrayim, and right away you say, Yetzias Mitzrayim is not an event which occurred 3,500 years ago. No, it's important. It's relevant to us. Why do we say it? In order to explain our interest in events which occurred long ago. It is worthwhile. What question do you want to answer by making this statement? What question do you want to answer by making this statement? What's the question? What? Irrelevant. Who is interested? If you tell a story, people have got to be interested in this story. Who is interested in what happened 3,500 years ago? I'm not interested in what happened today, this morning. I certainly have no interest in events which transpired 3,500 years ago or more. So what is the answer? No, you have to be concerned with it. They merit your interest, your concern, because they are relevant to us. If not Gulas Mitzrayim, no Jewish people would have come into existence. הריונו ובנינו ובני בנינו משובוד ומנינו בפרד מצרים. That means it is relevant to us. Since it's relevant, what does it merit? If it's relevant, what does it merit? It starts with curiosity. It's got to be recorded and told. Which event is recorded in history and which event is not recorded in history? Relevant events, not only for the people, for contemporaries, but for future generations. And that's exactly what we say. The events which we are going to narrate are very relevant to us. Because if those events hadn't taken place, the whole Jewish community would not have come into existence. The second declaration, what's the second declaration? What do you say in the second declaration? You're correct, but what do you say? It's correct, you're right, but what do you say? The second declaration you make after the conclusion of the narrative part of the Haggadah, when we are ready to begin the recital of Hallel. The reading B'chol Deir precedes Lefichoch and the recital of Hallel, correct? In this declaration we state that events which transpired so many years ago are not only relevant to us, as we said at the beginning of the recital, but that they are a part of our historical experience. There is a difference between being relevant and being experienced. Here we stress the uniqueness of our relationship to the past, our intimacy with the past, and our retrospective experiencing or re-experiencing of such events which transpired at the dawn of our history. The Jew has a capability to experience history. Because if the Jew hadn't that capability to experience history, why is he fighting for Eretz Israel, for the state of Israel? He feels very close to that state, to those sites. So Kisra Marobit, Baras HaMachpelah, to Yehuda V'Shemra, and he speaks, he pronounces Yehuda V'Shemra, so what's so great about Yehuda V'Shemra? There's a certain intimacy with the past that the Jew feels, and he's unique in that regard. It is the ability to re-experience, to experience in retrospect events which took place so long ago. And that's what entitles us not only to be concerned and to record events and to tell about them, but to what else? To say Hallel, to sing, to dance. To say Shirah Chadosha as if the events happened just yesterday. As if I had witnessed the events. Now, what is the third declaration? So you have two declarations. So one declaration is related to relevance. The second declaration is related to what? To re-experiencing. Or retrospection, historical retrospection. What's the third declaration? Yeah, I know the declaration. I know the declaration. Yes. Yeah, what? All right. The third declaration, Vishabda, introduces a completely new aspect. Namely, new motif. Namely, what motif? That's what I'm asking. I didn't ask you before. What do you want to say? Yes. What motif is it? I want a name here. I want a label here. Amalek motif. What is Amalek? Not a has-been, but who is present everywhere, and whose defeat will usher into the eschatological era. In Hashem Sholem Hachimoch Zaris of Amalek. Before the two declarations from Hilulei Eitzi and Chaldea Vadea, one deals with relevance, the other deals with re-experiencing. But re-experiencing when? In the past. It's a past event. Both declarations speak of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim as an event in the past. One declaration says it is relevant to us, the second declaration says we experience it. But still, the events lie in the past, not in the present. We celebrate Passover, and we observe the seudah, and the seudah body, in order to memorialize what? An event in the past. It is remembrance. Living remembrance, but just remembrance. And Vishamdol Aviseinu Velon, which introduces an Amalek motif. Those events, they occurred 3,500 years ago, you say. Just yesterday. Just before yesterday. Last year. We are not sure that it wouldn't occur tomorrow morning. And a week from now, and a year from now, and a century from now. Every generation is confronted by a Pharaoh. And I must tell you, the Pharaoh in Egypt was the next one going. The Pharaohs of today are by far worse. In every generation, this is the Amalek motif. In every generation, there is somebody who is possessed by psychopathic, cruel, bloodthirsty hate, and the target of hate are we, Jewish people. We celebrate the festival not because we remember, not because we experience, but because it is a permanent drama. Every generation lives through the experience of Yetzias Mitzrayim. In other words, Yetzias Mitzrayim is the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, is the story of Jewish destiny throughout the centuries and millennia. You want to know the Jew? Read the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. You want to know what happened to the Jew yesterday? Yetzias Mitzrayim. Today, Yetzias Mitzrayim. What will happen tomorrow? Yetzias Mitzrayim. Of course, one has to use his intellect to understand the story well. And that's why the story is not just a reading. The story, Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, means study in depth. It's a problem of Mesorah, passing on, because it is the eternal story of an eternal people. And you know our minute, that when it comes to Vishamdol Aviseinu, when you cover the matzah When you pick up the course, where you say, Vishom Davar V'Seinu V'Lonu Shleachot B'Lvad, Omar Daveinu Chaleseinu. Why? What's the idea? Covering the matzah because you pick up the course. Whenever you pick up a cup of wine, you cover the bread on the table. That's understandable. But why pick up the cup of wine? It's just a minute, of course. Why? Why is it necessary? Because the cup in biblical lingo has the connotation of destiny. Vishanto Vashemen Reishi, Koisi Revoyo. My cup is overflowing. It means my destiny is overflowing, fulfilled. Because Yeshua says so. V'shem ad Hashem Echo. And that is, we want to proclaim that the story which are going to narrate to the medium of reciting and interpreting Parshas Arami Oved Avi, we just say it before we start, say Omad Mabikesh Lovan Arami. It is not the destiny, it is not the story of the past. It is the story of our eternal destiny. Okay, these, those three aspects don't belong to the pilgrim. They are typical of the Haggadah Pesach night. So how many aspects did we cover? 7. All right, enumerate them. Just one. First is Kriah. Next. Rimon. Next. 3. Next. Church of God. 4. Seudah is 5. Shevach. Just a moment. No, just a minute, you made a mistake. Kriah, 1. Rimon 2, don't confuse me. Rimon 2, Mesorah 3. Seudah. It's 4 and Seudah is 5, and the eternal book of our destiny. Shirah 6, this is 7. So now we are speaking about 8. Right. The 8th aspect is a very strange one. I never told it to anybody. My secret until tonight. That's really my secret. I want you, the listeners here, not to misinterpret me and not to draw conclusions which are wrong. And at least to have patience with me until I'll finish explaining this aspect. All right, you're very curious now. So I hope you won't fall asleep. The Mishnah says the Derish Parshas Arami Oved Avi, and he interprets the section of Arami Oved Avi at Sheyigmer Kol HaParsha Kula, until he concludes the whole parsha. In fact, we don't recite the whole parsha, not at all, from beginning to the last word. We omit the last 1.5 sentence. A sentence and a half which is omitted, we don't say. Where do you start? Where do you start? As far as the recital of the parsha Arami Oved Avi is concerned, where do you start? What's the last sentence? No? Who knows Haggadah by heart? וישמע לשם יצחקנו וירש עלינו ושמרנו ושלחתנו ויקים השם מצרים להיות חזוק ומזרעי ניטויו ובמאיר גודל ובאיסיס ובמייסים. Here we start, ובאיסיס ובמייסים. דברך להיות חזוק 2 ובאיסיס 2 ובמייסים 2. אלו הסבקש הראי והקדוש ברוך הוא למצרים במצרים, ואלו עם גם צפדיה רב יהודה עם מייסים במסימונים וצח חדש באחת, correct? And then we say Rabbi Sagurim Alinayna Teima Shkoma Koma Kashivach Yishboch Mitzrayim Moshe Chomish Maketz Shalom. So we start Beises to the Meitz. When you read the parsha Arami Oved Avi in in Chumash, the way it's recorded in Chumash, and the way the pilgrim used to recite in Beis HaMikdash, of all, we used to add a 1.5 pasuk. Vayveinu al hamokim hazeh, vayitem lo mesoret hazeis, eretz zo v'ascholo v'dvosh, ve'ato in Yetzias reishis Kriah domo asher nasato liyad Hashem. As a matter of fact, if you look up the Sippur, you'll find midrashic interpretations of the last pasuk as well. Very strange. Vayveinu al hamokim hazeh yochel eretz Yisrael, חמודלין והייתם לא נסורת הזה, אלא מה עמוק עם זה, זהו בית הבחיר. It refers to the church. We need to 1.5 pasuk. ויראינו לעמוק עם הזה, הייתם לא נסורת הזה, ארזו והשכול המדרוש, ואתו in Yetzias reishis Kriah domo sato liyad Hashem. There is no doubt, and the Mishnah and the Rambam confirm it, that the pilgrim who brought the Bikkurim used to say everything, including the sentence and a half, no doubt about it. Ve'ato in Yetzias reishis Kriah domo sato liyad Hashem. It's very simple. Of course, we could not recite the last part of the verse. Ve'ato in Yetzias reishis Kriah domo. It does not apply to the Haggadah Pesach. However, we could say the first part of the verse, Vayveinu al hamokim hazeh, losis vayitem lo mesoret hazeis, eretz zo v'ascholo v'dvosh. Very important statement. And gives thanks to the Almighty for bias oretz, for the inheritance of the land. We don't do it. Question is why? It's a tough question. Why? It is tough because no one asked this question. So now let me hear suggestions from the audience. I've never spoke about it, you can't quote me. Yes, what do you want to say? Let me give you 2 answers. One answer will be explosive. It will blow up the whole. The second answer is the truth. But there is a lot of truth to the first answer too. There are 2 answers to this question. Answer number one, and please listen carefully. Were we to mention the verse of bias oretz, vayveinu al hamokim hazeh, vayitem lo mesoret hazeis eretz zo v'ascholo v'dvosh, in the section of Arami Oved Avi at the seudah table, Pesach night, we would give the impression as if the vadeisi eisom elo oretz, asher nososes yodi loses la'avrom Yitzchak leYaakov. Where is that pasuk? Vadeisi eisom elo oretz, asher nososes yodi la'avrom Yitzchak leYaakov loses lahem. Where is it? In Mesorah. Within what context was this pasuk? In what context does this pasuk appear? V'dalet l'sheni shogula. Let me read it. V'etzeisi eschem mitachasilis Mitzrayim, v'yitzalti eschem ma'avidosom, v'goalti eschem b'zrei hanetuyo, u'b'shpotim g'delim, v'lokachti eschem lilo'om, v'yisi lachem l'eleki. Those v'yitzeisi, v'yitzalti, v'goalti, v'lokachti constitute what? Every word knows that. So many drushes in other words. The four idioms, or the four, expressions, or media of Geula, of redemption, of freedom. However, in the next verse, the Almighty continues and says, "Va'avesi eschem el haaretz asher nososes yodi losesei al Avrom leYitzchak uleYaakov." The question is a Zionist question. Shall we count the Vavesi as a fifth idiom of Gevurah, or should we ignore the Vavesi? The Vavesi is not the fifth idiom of Gevurah. Don't defend any causes now. Don't defend any. I don't need any defense. Yeah. This is the question. Of course, there is an opinion by the Ram, we don't know exactly, that if he's thirsty, he may drink a fifth cup of wine, and recite over this cup Hallel Haggadah. Yeah. So apparently the Rambam had the number 5 he was not sure about number 5. Does it belong to the table of freedoms, of 4 freedoms? So then we have not 4 freedoms, but 5 freedoms. Or doesn't it belong? Since we all drink 4 cases, not one drinks 5 cases, I don't know, perhaps a young could choose, I don't know. But I saw great Jews drink just 4 cases. So it means that the conclusion is that Vavesi does not belong into the table of the 4 freedoms. Because if it had belonged into that table, if it had been a part of that table of 4 freedoms, then there would have been not Arba cases, but Chomish cases. The expression Arba cases, everybody knows. Chomish cases, no one heard. Did you hear of Chomish cases? I didn't. Even though somebody wrote a book on it. So now you have to mention it. This would have been decided. Is Vavesi? Does Vavesi belong to the table of freedoms? Or doesn't it belong? Would have been decided by what? By the way we recite Arami Oved Avi. If we had recited Arami Oved Avi in full, including the pasuk by Yeveinu El Oretz על המוקים הזה, ויתן לו Mesorah הזה, had it been recited by Jews throughout the world on the first night of Pesach, then Vavesi in Mesorah would have joined before Resheni Shagula, before Egypt of Gula. But since the Vayeinu al Mokim הזה, ויתן לו Mesorah הזה, was left out, was omitted, that the omission has actually, eliminated the Vavesi from the table of freedoms, and we retained 4 instead of 5 freedoms, correct? Why was it omitted? Question. Why was it omitted? That's all Chazal omitted. Why was it omitted? Why actually the table consists of 4 and not of 5? What do you say? Just a moment, it has nothing to do with it. Why was it omitted? No. Tradition knows 4 aspects of Gura, correct? 4 dimensions of Gura, not 5. The Vavesi is not counted. There are 2 reasons, and both reasons are true. The Vavesi is not counted since the grant of the land was not due to the new promise made to Moshe. Vavesi v'yitzalti v'yitzalti v'goalti v'lokachti represent 4 freedoms which were announced to Moses for the first time. No one else prior to Moses has ever heard of that promise. V'yitzesi v'yitzalti v'goalti v'lokachti. The 4 great principles of freedom. So, Vavesi was not announced. Moses was not the first one to whom HaKadosh Baruch Hu has addressed the Vavesi. The Almighty Himself stresses the fact that He promised the land to the patriarchs. Asher nososi es yodei la'Avrom Yitzchak leYaakov, what is for him. He included, of course, the Vaveisi in the message of redemption, which was revealed to Moshe. However, Vaveisi per se belongs into the covenant of the patriarchs, not into the Mosaic covenant, which was concluded in Mitzrayim. The Vaveisi is a part of the patriarchic covenant which was reached with Abraham, Yitzchak and Jacob, of course. But it was not a part of the covenant of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The covenant of Yetzias Mitzrayim consisted of 4 freedoms. Namely, V'itzeisi, V'tzalti, V'goalti, V'lokachti, not a 5. The Vaveisi was addressed for the first time to Avraham Avinu, but not to Moshe. Moreover, why not? Moreover, the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was not the entry into Eretz Israel, not at all. The purpose which the Almighty pursued by taking the people out of Egypt and setting them free is not the entry into Canaan. Even though the latter was the destination where the people who were heading after they departed from Mitzrayim. Yes, it was the destination, but not the destiny. There is a difference between destination and destiny, between destination and purpose and goal. If I travel from Boston to New York, my destination is Boston, is New York. But my goal in traveling is not New York, but something else. I don't know what. The destination certainly was Eretz Yisrael. ואלס מעוני מצרים אל ארץ הכנעני החיבי והיבוסי והפריזי והגרגושי ארץ זו והסחול ובדבוש. Wow! I'll bring them, yes. But this was not the purpose. What was the purpose? After the Gauti, what comes after the Gauti? Glokachtem, Mamed Arshina, Martin Pere, the formation of a new community, of a Mamlechas Kriah in the gay college, of a kingdom of priests in the holy nation, of Martin Pere, who once the Glokachti was realized, so Yetzias Mitzrayim is justified in the world. The Almighty said to Moshe, V'zelach ho'ez, ki onechi shlachticho, v'tzia be'etzi acho eshom miMitzrayim, tavdu neselekim, al ha'or hazeh. What does he tell him? Moshe complained that he is not a man who fits to be the representative of the people in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, vis-a-vis the Mitzrim, Pharaoh. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him the following: Moshe, I selected you because the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim is not economic political freedom, the attainment of economic political freedom. Had I wanted to grant political economic freedom to the people, I would have chosen somebody else as leader. You are not qualified for that. However, the ultimate end of Yetzias Mitzrayim is the formation of a Mamlechas Kriah, the Gay Kodesh, a people of Torah, of a scholastic community where the teacher is the central person, figure. As far as the purpose of the Exodus is teaching people. Teaching slaves how it is possible, how a slave can become a prince or a member of Mamlechas Kriah v'Gei Kodesh. I don't need a diplomat. I don't need a commander-in-chief. Had I needed them, I wouldn't have chosen you. I need a great Rebbe, a teacher, We should show the miracle to transform a people within 7 weeks from slaves into Mamlechas Kini V'di Kodesh. And for that job, you are most qualified. And I want you. And this is the reason that I have selected thee, because Yetzias Mitzrayim, after the people will depart from Mitzrayim, your job will not be to conquer a land, but to teach them how to worship God on that mount, is a Mount Sinai. That is exactly the reason. That's exactly the reason, please. That's exactly the reason for omitting the last verse from parsha Arami Oved Avi, because this is not included in the covenant which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reached with Moses, and this is not the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim is velokachti, period. They go out, period. Later, I can promise you, mate, not because of Yetzias Mitzrayim. I'll do it, but the table is limited. 4. The highest is the velokachti. The velokachti is the purpose, the goal, they tell us. The Vesi is outside of that. I promise, I addressed my promise to the patriarchs, I'll fulfill my promise. So it does not belong to your table of forefathers. That's why there are 4 cases in that 5 cases. Because the Yetzias, by the Eino Lamokim Hazeh, was omitted from Arami Oved Avi, when the Yetzias was taken out of the table of freedoms. Let me say, Pesach is the festival of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Pesach is also the festival of Matan Torah, because Shavuos was appended to Pesach. It's called Atzeres, a stay over from Pesach. You know that. But Pesach is not the holiday of Matan Oretz, of Bias Oretz. It is not the festival on which we celebrate the entry into Eretz Yisrael. Under no circumstance. Because the purpose was velokachti, and Bias Oretz is outside of the table of freedom. So you'll ask me, so Bias Oretz is an important event in our history. Our bond with Eretz Yisrael is strong, invincible. Not even time can defeat our loyalty to the land. So the Torah did not tell us to observe the Bias Oretz, to celebrate Bias Oretz. Yes, she did. My Maimonides gave the answer on Sukkot. What is the character of Sukkot? What kind of a holiday is Sukkot? So my Maimonides in Meir Nevuchim, he said, this is the holiday of Bias Oretz, of the inheritance of the land, of the entry into the land, of the conquest of the land, and of our eternal rights to the land, not Pesach. Let me read a quotation from my Maimonides. I believe, my Maimonides writes, that the 4 species are symbolical expression of our rejoicing that the Israelites changed the wilderness, no place of seed, or of figs, or of wine, or of pomegranate, or of water, for a land, for a country full of fruit and rivers. In order to remember this, we will take the fruit which is the most pleasant of the fruit of the land. Unquote. What does my Maimonides say? Sukkot is the Yom Tov of Bias Oretz. My man just mentioned the mitzvahs are meaning typical typical of the celebration, which is associated with the land, with the producing land. I'll also mention sukkah, which is sukkah also. It's a sukkah, nisach. All those mitzvahs have a certain link with the land, because the mitzvahs are representative of the celebration of the holiday, because of Yerusha Torah. Pesach we observe because of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Shavuos Matan Torah, Sukkot Yerusha Torah. Hence, the Vaylein Elamokim should not be recited on Pesach. It does not belong into the table of freedoms where you drink 4 cases and not 5. There is another answer. Because this answer does not remove one question, does not need the question in total. Namely, this answer does not need the question in total. The Mishnah says, Achidina parsha Arami Oved Avi kula. So how could the Mishnah say? I gave a reason why the last verse is not omitted. It's omitted because Sukkot is outside of the table of all freedom, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu addressed to Moses. But still the Mishnah says, V'gemer kol parsha kula. He concludes the whole parsha. I believe that there is another answer. It's up to you to choose. I might say I have no doubt that at the time during which the sanctuary stood on Mount Moriah, בזמן שמסמלים של הקיים, and Yisrael al Admosom, and the people were on their land. We used to say with great love and gratitude the last verse, Vaylein al Amokim hazeh, Vayiten lo Mesorah hazeh, Yisrael zavas cholo v'dvar. With great enthusiasm, with great ecstasy. We felt duty bound to thank God, not only for the Exodus, but for the entry into the promised land, and for the construction of the Beis HaMikdash as well. When the Mishnah said, when the Mishnah speaks, I want you to know, the Mishnah is in our Psochim, speak of Pesach during the time of the Beis HaMikdash, not a far Pesach, Pesach in Golan, but Pesach in Eretz Yisrael, while the Beis HaMikdash was still on Mount Moriah. Then the Jew used to say Arami Oved Avi from beginning to end. Vayleinu al Amokim hazeh, Vayiten lo Mesorah hazeh, Eretz zavas cholo v'dvar. But times have changed. The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Eretz Yisrael conquered by the enemy. The Jewish people driven off the land. Chazal apparently doubted the propriety of thanksgiving on the night of Pesach for a land which lost its children, and for Beis HaMikdash in shambles and in ruin. And they, after whom, they eliminated the last one. Which one do you like better? Which one do you like better? First, amazing. I also. But you'll be in the minority. You'll be in the minority. What I'm concerned as far as the first parrot is concerned, with regard to the first answer, is the Mishnah Achigemer Kol parsha Kula. It's not Kol parsha Kula. Of course, according to the second parrot, the Mishnah is beautiful, the text. The Mishnah is is a Kabbalah from the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Then they used to say the whole parsha. After destruction of the temple and the departure of the Jews from Eretz Israel, they eliminated the last one. What? No. For instance, the Mishnah says also in Bikkurim, Kol parsha kula, or even if it's left out the sentence, V'ishtachavisa v'nachton v'yadishem lekecho, V'ishtachavisa v'yadishem lekecho. Because this is out of context completely. Right? So how many do you have? How many aspects? 8. So how are you 2? I'm afraid I'm going to pay you interest. One more, 11. I don't know. You count. So now let us redefine. What does Haggadah mean? After all, I mean, before you, 5 minutes of 8, if I had asked you what Haggadah meant, so what would you have answered me? What would you have answered me? Kriah, to read and to say droshes, huh? But now we have a new concept of Haggadah. What's number 1? Kriah, next. Limud. Just one. Next. Mesorah. Next. Of God is 4. No? Seudah is 5. Shirah is 6. The declaration that the Haggadah is an eternal book is 7. And then what? And then the goal. What is the goal? The goal of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The goal, the telos of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yes. The destiny. So how many up to 10? How many are we missing? We have 8. 2 or 3 we'll see. I'm closing now. The 15th night of Nisan is a night of ecstasy, as I said before, of love and gratitude. Hence, we thank God not only for the chesed He bestowed upon us in Mitzrayim. This would be a limited way of expressing gratitude to the Almighty, just for the events in Mitzrayim. The Jew on that night, while was there, is God aware and God loving. He suddenly reminds himself of many, many acts of endless kindness which God bestowed upon him, for which he is indebted to his Maker. Everything he is, everything he has, everything he will ever have, belongs to God. God created him, God sustains him, God feeds him, God gives him whatever makes life worthwhile with him. Should he thank for that? On the night of Pesach? Or should he leave out all the hasadim? Just limit his praise to the events and occurrences which transpired in Mitzrayim 3,500 years ago. Of course not. So he extends the praise from the events in Mitzrayim to current events, to himself, his own life, the life of his household. Then he says, and a part of the Haggadah consists in telling God nothing else, in addressing to God nothing else but a childish praise. Thank you, God, for everything. And that does the Jew in Birkas Hamazon. I told you there is in Birkas Hamazon a part of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim and the Haggadah. How is it a part? Well, she's so much in Eretz Mitzrayim, but this is not enough to integrate. It should suffice to integrate Yetzias with Sippur Yetziat, built some Muslim into the framework of Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim. No, this is not the point. Because the Sippur Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Hallel, the Shevach, is extended. ובטובי הגודל תמיד יחסר לנו, ועל יחסר לנו מוזן לעולם גויים. It's Hallel, not for events in Mitzrayim, but for current events. And there is another. This is the Neifester. Because until now we spoke about Hallel and Shirah and praise and glorification for the events in Mitzrayim, not for other events as well. But there is another problem. And why thank God exclusively for ourselves? Why not express gratitude for everybody? For mankind as a whole. And why only for mankind as a whole? Why not acknowledge our indebtedness for God's kindness, not only toward man, but toward every flesh, every plant? Why not thank God for the flowering bush in the backyard, for the flying seagull over the waters, or the beach? The Shirah Haggadah does it, embraces everybody, everything. Thanks on behalf of the universe. Unesin lechem lechol basar, ki leilam chased. The whole world is saturated with his chesed. Hazonet zakir. Man, animal, seagull, the bush in my backyard, and the flowers in spring. And finally, this is, which aspect is it? 9. And finally, the Shirah Haggadah reaches out beyond the present into the future. I mean, we are used to the idea that you thank God for something He did to you already. For help, He extended to you. For sustenance, He already gave you. For life, He already granted you. Why? I have faith in Him. He'll grant me many more years. He'll give me health. He'll make possible for me to accomplish things of which I dreamt for so long. And why not thank Him, not only for the things He gave us, but for the things we are sure He is going to give to us in the future. And the Jew has this funny concept of future. What is future? Near is the future. What is the future? Tomorrow? No, Achris Hayamim. What is Achris Hayamim? The end of time. Is it tomorrow morning, next day, next week, next month? Or it is at the end of times, a distant future. According to Yahadus, all that depends upon man. We can accelerate the march of the future, the march of the eschatological era. We can slow down the march. And Pesach night, the Jew only, it's once a year, says, Hallel, and sings the hymns of the for events which have taken place here, for events which we have faith in Him, will transpire, and for the realization of the great hope. Abayemahu, Yad Shonach Vadishmecha, Nishmas Kol Chai Tevan, V'Shimcha Yishmach.